Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Keith Whalen from RPI. I'm here with our presenter, Ms. Brittney Degler. I want to thank you for taking the time to attend this webinar on Lawson's supply chain 10x differences. Ms. Degler has delivered this presentation at various user groups, and it's been evolving through various webinars. She's also done 10x differences for dozens of clients. A lot of good content packed in here, and I'm going to hand it off to her in just a second. First, I have a couple of housekeeping notes. One is we encourage questions. Whatever questions you have, just type them into the GoToWebinar chat or questions module, and Mr. Bill Getty will ask them throughout the presentation. Second is, we will be recording this webinar, and it takes us about a week and a half, placing it on YouTube where anybody can access it and watch it, yourself, your colleagues. Definitely appreciate you participating and watching our webinars, and hope that you share them with your contacts as well. And with that, I give you Ms. Brittney Degler.
Hi. So like Keith said, I'm Brittney Degler. I'm a supply chain consultant here with RPI. And we are going to do a little show and tell today on your SCM differences for version 10X. So when you're doing your upgrade, what are the differences that have come about? We'll go over all of them. All right, so today's agenda, we're going to go over the Mingle experience itself. I'd say it's the majority of the changes that have come about. So we'll touch on that, and you'll see some screenshots of what it really looks like. Then we'll start in progression through inventory control, do a little requisition, some POs, and then we'll talk about warehouse and some auditing features. All right, so Mingle is a new look, but it's a very similar feel. It's a new color scheme, a little more modern. We're calling it Mingle, so it's no longer Portal. There's just a couple of changes, a few additions to the modules, maybe some minor enhancements, but the biggest things that are changing are your searching capabilities and your auditing, and we'll go over those. So if you take a look at the top left over here, you've got what you're used to seeing in version 9. So it's kind of blue on blue on blue on gray and 3D style. Now we're going to a more two-dimensional design. It's a lot of white space. We've got some blue for the links and some black, and it's a lot, to me, a little bit more appealing because everything's a little bit clearer, it doesn't run into each other. Some people ask, is it possible to change it? The white's blinding. Unfortunately, no, but with everything there is an adjustment period, so give it a couple weeks and I'm sure that you'll grow to love it. Now, I'm going to talk about Foundation and Enterprise. Many of you may not have actually heard of Enterprise, but Foundation is the basis of what Mingle is. It's a single sign-on. It's a very user-friendly interface, and there's a new context engine. I like to kind of call them widgets, but there's a whole slew of things that can give you a little bit more information. And the other thing is the Enterprise. So I would call it an add-on to Mingle Foundation. And a majority of you do not actually have Enterprise, but for the select few that have decided to add it, or you're just curious, what is this Enterprise? It's really just a social media style of sharing. So it's kind of a little more added SharePoint effort, I guess, in feature is the word. And I'll show you a screenshot in just a few seconds. But this is an example of what it'll look like when you actually first log into Mingle. Up here you've got your home. It's a little house. It'll turn blue when you actually click on it or when you first log in. And this is just an example of what your homepage can look like. It's something that security and your technical folks will actually set up for you and decide upon. Yours may look different because, again, it's something that you can configure. However, this is something more like a dashboard. You can have your calendar. You can add connections with people, resources, any business groups. And you can also actually add announcements down here. For example, you'll see that over here. And what I talked about before is the Enterprise, and if you log into Enterprise, if your company has it, this is about what it looks for. I actually still, this is a slide from Infor, a screenshot that they've taken, but this is just a full dashboard if you were to actually take advantage of the Enterprise. You've got alerts, tasks, posts, you've got some colorful graphs on the bottom, and the nice thing is that everything you do can be followed or have notifications. And so, as you can kind of tell, it's kind of like Twitter, Facebook meets business, but not LinkedIn yet. So back to Mingle. So your home page, like I talked about before, we've got your home button up at the top, and when you actually click on Lawson, it's for the most part always going to be this, this blue globe. When you click on it, it turns blue. So if you're on home, that'd be blue. The nice thing is it also tells you exactly where you are. So if you're at your home, it'd say home. For example, this one is saying that we're in Lawson, so you know that you're in Lawson. Now you might be wondering about these other buttons. If you're using MSEM, or you're doing internal requisition center, or you're doing LBI, you can actually have these buttons up at the top. These ones, for example, that's LBI and MSCM, but you can actually choose. There's a whole slew of buttons that you can choose from, which is pretty nice. Style it up a little bit. But you can choose whatever you want up there. And then this is just an example of what it looks like when you're on an actual screen, like PO20 when you're in Lawson. Again, this is just a more descriptive description of what it looks like. You've got your application form, your form toolbar, you've got your user toolbar up the top right. It all looks pretty much the same, right? The biggest change in terms of the upfront look is you've got your bookmarks over to the leftover side here. Typically in version 9, you had that menu over on the left-hand side. And you can dock it and you can put it away. But now the bookmarks are still configured the same way. You go to your user options. However, bookmarks is now going to be a drop-down, so it's not going to stay on your screen like it used to before. So keep it a little less cluttered. However, we also have the contextual applications, which are over on the right-hand side of the screen. This is, again, a new update 2.10. But this can be docked on the right side of your screen if you so choose, or you can keep it contracted over here. But we'll go into those a little bit more. We talked about them a little bit, but everything looks pretty much the same otherwise. Now, your settings over here are still in the same location. You've got your content and user options, and there's a really nice feature that's been added, and you'll see it in your user options right here. It's Use List View Presentation, and the greatest thing about this is that it's a new way to view records. Specifically, if it looks just like this up at the top, if you have it turned on, you can narrow down what you're looking for based on each field. So if you don't know exactly what you're looking for, you don't know exactly what the PO number is, and you don't want to just type it into the form, this saves you a little extra step. It goes straight to this list view, and then you can click between the show form and the show list if you want to go back and forth. And then I'll actually go back to that screen just to show you that if you do decide to use the list view, you tag it right here, but it also has the option of excluding forms. So say, for example, there's one form like maybe AP20 or PO20. There's lots of records, thousands and thousands, and sometimes that can lag in your system and it can take a couple extra seconds. Mind you, it's a couple extra seconds, but your time is precious, so maybe you don't want to use it for that screen, but you want to use it for all the other ones. You can type in PO20.1, and the .1 is important, you have to be specific on here, but you put in the PO20.1 in there, and then every time you go to PO20, it goes straight to the form for you, and not to list view, but if you go to RQ10, it'll go straight to list view and not to the form. So you have that option if you want to use it. Another thing that's been added is the status bar. Now you've always had the status bar at the bottom, but have you ever been on a screen and clicked something and all of a sudden your status went away and you didn't know if it got released or you didn't know if it got changed and you have to play around with it? Well, if you actually click this little arrow down at the bottom, it'll show you the string of actions that has happened. So if you ever click on something else and it goes away, you can see it and you can see the last few of what you've done. All right, my favorite. So Requisitions Check is one of the newest widgets. It pretty much tells you all of the information for one process, one requisition, one purchase order, one invoice. It tells you the whole Rec Check process within one widget. And it actually has, there's a finance widget similar to this that relates to the finance side of it. It's not exact. And there's also an HR one that does it. But specifically for requisition to payment, if you go to any one of the screens that are associated with each step in the process, it's going to show all of the information right in that widget. It grabs the information. So all you have to do, for example, on this one, I went to PO 20. I entered in the PO, and the second I hit inquire, not only did the information drop down at the bottom for your actual form, but all the information related to where it is in the rec to check process is posted over here. So if this one, for example, was not received and not paid out, it would only show you the requisition and PO. What's nice about this is that it's specifically for buyers. A lot of times requesters can ask what the status of your order is. You can go and quickly find that information without drilling around too much. And alternatively, for requesters, if you're looking to contact your buyer about a specific requisition, it'd be nice to use this and actually talk to them with a PO number, because buyers speak PO very well. So that's your best bet, but it can be very useful. And if you're looking to change any of your contextual applications, up in the top right, you might have noticed there's a little settings button. This is actually where you get to the screen where you can pick and choose which contextual applications you'd like to use. And then you use these arrows to make them go back and forth, which ones are applied and which ones are not. The one I like up here is this little star. You get a star, you get a star. This is your shortcuts button. So you can still use favorites, you can still use your bookmarks if you want, but if you're ever on a screen, like you have 5 screens specifically, just those screens that you use all the time, it's kind of like your browser when you favorite something in your internet browser. You can do the same here. You just go to the screen, click that button, and then it'll show up in your shortcuts widget. This is just an example. Related forms is the same, as you can tell. But specifically, if you add Print Manager, it's one of the contextual applications that can be viewed in the context widget. But what's really fun about this is the Print Manager shows you all of your most recent reports in order. And if you double click on it, it'll take you right there. You can still have it in your bookmarks. This is a much quicker way, but I can't count the number of times that I've gone to PO 100 to get to my Print Manager for a report instead of going straight there. So this is gonna be very direct for you, and especially for those big report users, this is gonna be helpful. And I also just like to mention at the bottom we've got icons and text, especially while you're getting used to the new look and feel of Mingle. It's nice to be able to switch between the icons and text, and that's something that you can do in your user options for your toolbar button display. So if you want to switch between those. And here's just a listing of your general forms for Lawson, just so that everyone can be reminded. I'm sure many of you know this, but in case you don't, can be very helpful so you can see how Lawson progresses through the setup screens and your batch jobs versus your batch reports specifically. So one actually does something, one just gives you information. And then also the flowcharts in the menu. If you don't know all those Lawson numbers offhand, which I'm not sure if anyone could possibly remember all of them, you can use your system code plus FL or system code plus MN, so that's ICFL or RQFL or POMN. These are all going to show up in a workflow kind of visual graph so that you can look through and see what forms are there if you don't know it offhand. So it's going to help you as a guide. All right, and lastly, we've just got these portal shortcuts. I like to show these as well because these are your hotkeys. These are going to make things quicker, especially if you're someone who likes to use the keyboard more than you like to use your mouse. You might want to know these shortcut keys. I will warn against actually changing these. These are Lawson defaulted in there for you. I only warn against changing them because your browser functionality has hotkeys as well, and sometimes they can mess with each other if you change them to the same thing. So just be aware of that if you decide you want to make any changes. All right, now that was the big portion of Mingle that we went over. Now we're actually going to get into the nitty-gritty of the modules. So we'll start with IC. And the item group, your IC00.1, they've actually added configuration that allows you to bypass the unit of measurement edits on IC. It actually sends you a warning message if you try to change the units of measure. But what it's doing is it's allowing a unit of measure to be inactivated when there are still open transactions that exist for items in the item group. Some organizations found that the unit of measure controls helped keep their inventory in sync with the GL accounts. However, other supply chain groups didn't like stopping open transactions just to fix the unit of measure discrepancy, so now you have the ability to switch between them if you so choose. Do note that the edits to prevent the unit of measurement from being removed when they're stock on hand or they're listed on related agreements, that still remains in place. So this is just for the open transaction side of it. And with that, we've actually got a new unit of measure usage report that kind of goes hand in hand with it. It's the IC216. And this is just a report that shows you any unit of measure by item that has an open transaction. And I'll show you actually a screenshot. This is your unit of measure usage report. Now, bear with me because this was taken from our sandbox, so there weren't too many transactions at the time that had conflicts. But if you scroll down all the way to the bottom, we've got a PO number and a line number. So you can identify what those open transactions are, and you can go through them and correct them. Next, we've got the IC11 Item Master. They've actually added a third description, which is a whopping 350 characters, which is really exciting because before description 1 and 2, they're pretty limited, and sometimes you have a lot of information you want to share with your requesters and everyone else. So if you want to use this description 3 with the excess number of characters. Specifically, this can be helpful if you want to add the vendor description. So you've got all of the details that go into there without having to shorten the words and kind of condense it. And then also the comments have been changed. They've separated out, and now they're header comments and detail comments. Here we've got where the item description 3 is actually added to, and you'll hear me talk about item description 3 a bunch of times. I apologize, but it's a nice new feature. So these are all the things that are affected, mostly IC things. We've also got the vendor agreement line in there too. And with that, we've got a new search option for that description 3 field, as well as the manufacturer number, especially if you don't know the Lawson number, or maybe it's newly been added and you want to search for what it is, but you know what the manufacturing number is, you can search on that too. Something new that's come up very recently in the newest version, 10.0.7, is that they've added you can view stock at companies and locations for items when drilling around on IC12. It's nice because it gives you the ability to quickly inquire whether a specific item is being used at other locations for a company. And I can't tell you how many times I've definitely looked for that kind of feature, so I'm really happy that it's finally been added. IC30, we've got some wildcards that have been added, so before and after a search, you can put your little star in there and make sure that you find everything that you're looking for. Replenishment worksheet is IC66. It now sorts by item and bin. Here, IC transactions. You'll see distribution company field has been added. So if users are using the intercompany functionality in their Lawson and transaction forms, then this is definitely going to be helpful. They've also added the GTIN. It's just another step towards making it easier to adopt those GS1 standards. And like we did before, we've got, this is a chart of the IC applications and forms that send data to the contextual application. For example, that rec to check, that requisition to payment widget we talked about. All right, on to requisition. So in requisition, they've actually added some distribution functionality. They've added a whole 5 new distribution lines. Before it was a max of 10, they've added the 5, so now we're totaled out at 15. Going on what we had talked about in IC, there's now a distribution company in there, and you can add that into your requester accounting in RQ04. They've also added RQ11, which is helpful for add-on charges. You can actually put AOCs on your requisition. This was actually put in place because some organizations found that they wanted to include the AOC in their process flow or their requisition approval so that it was approved on its way to being a PO and not just after the fact. So they've put that in there. And we've got a new Requisition Center homepage configuration. So this is actually kind of like a dashboard in Requisition Center. You do still have to go to the homepage. It doesn't default for you, so it's still going to automatically open up Requisition Center to your profile. But if you like to see everything in a dashboard manner, you're going to see your last 5 requisitions with copy and modify functionality. You'll see some your shopping features, your templates, and you'll see some status and a little graph to show. And this is an example of what it looks like. So you can actually change everything from here if you like, but you'll notice that it's over on the top over here. Again, you still log into profile and would go to home in order to see this beautiful screen. Couple more new features for Requisition Center. We've got some bill-only support, which I know there's some support for that. We've added some bill codes, and some procedure information, especially for that clinical information that maybe you want to add to the requisition that goes hand in hand with that bill only. It can route and bring forth to the PO if you so choose. It's something you do have to turn on. There's also allowing of multiple URL attachments. Now you've got unlimited hyperlinks that are supported. And I'm gonna kick that dead horse. Item master description 3 fields, increased to 350 characters. All right, 2 more features. Confirmation message is now displayed when you add a comment. Definitely many times I would add a comment to a requisition in my profile and it just kind of sits there. So now they've actually added a confirmation saying your comment has been added. Now it still stays there when you click it, but at least you get that message and that acknowledgement that it has been added and you don't have to question it later. And also, unreleased requisition confirmation. So if you are working in Requisition Center and you add a bunch of items, usually you can just X out of it and come back to it and it'll show you the exact same requisition that you were working on before, right? Well, now they actually do this little, is that your final answer? Make sure that you actually want to go away before releasing it instead of just leaving it up. So it's just confirming that you don't want to release it. Make sure that that's what your intention was. And lastly, before we move on to purchase order, we've got some additional platform support. My favorite is Chrome because I'm a big Chrome user, but typically it's been IE. We've also done IE 10. I've seen some IE 11, but there's definitely more support for you. All right, on to purchase order. So here, this is Procurement Templates. They've now added a vendor agreement reference field right down here. It's nice because if you are doing an entire template, which is just based on one reference agreement, you can see what that agreement is based off of and which one you're actually using. Also, we've got PO20. In your drill around, they've added a return quantity so you can see what's been returned. The return quantity is only updated when the PO13 has a status of shipped, so it won't actually update it until that point. And then there's a return from PO line that's updated when the PO, the vendor return has a status of added. So keep that in mind. And on PO25, sometimes you'll come up to PO25, you'll come up to a vendor agreement, and it'll be on hold. You have no idea why. So now they've added reason codes so that you can actually put in a reason why it's on hold so you don't have to go searching around through your emails, try to find why it's on hold. So it makes things a little easier for you, a little less work. And on PO25.6, vendor agreement, we've got comments at the line and header level, similar to what we had talked about before. And then, again, that 350 characters just brings it over. So you should use it, I would suggest. All right, PO64. Here's a screenshot of the new PO64. We've got match analysis at the top over here. That's going to transfer you to MA90 if you want to from that point. They've also added a couple new fields at the bottom. Match not received and open to match, you'll see right here. Those are new fields that have been added. And this isn't a 10.0.7 screenshot, but they've also added a closed quantity to the screen as well. And these are just an example of screens that push information to the contextual applications. The two newest ones in the most recent update are actually RQ44 and PO54, so both the RQ and PO inquiries. And on to the bill-only features. So this is the procedure information if you so choose to use it. It has to be turned on for the requester. But you've got your visit, your order, and your item. It's all a bunch of descriptions of the patient. If you want to input that clinical information and communicate it onto the PO, you can do that here. So RQ04, that's where you actually flip the flag. You've got some security in place. And this is your PO01.5 where you can actually decide what fields you want included in that procedure information. And the newest update in 10.07, there's actually some masking that they've added. They had it originally for visit number, medical record number, and case ID, but they added it for patient name, social security number, and a couple user-defined fields. Don't want that secret information getting out. So PO21.6, that's how your procedure information is added to PO, like I said. And there's also a bill code. You can use that bill-only PO code on your PO100 if you only want to filter by those bill-only requisitions. All right, on to PO approval process. There are two new screens and one new report. You've got approval code maintenance, approval review, and you've got a listing over there. Biggest thing is they now enforce the buyer limit setup on PO04. So an error now shows if your buyer reaches the limit that they're allowed to order for and approve for. So when that's when that's reached, it now shows that error. And two new features on your PO for 10.07 is that they've now added this one ship to per PO field option. And there's configuration in your vendor, in your company, and in the PO100 report if you want to make those POs one ship to per PO when they are converted. This is especially helpful for those that have their ship tos. There's a multitude of ship tos for your PO lines, but specifically if you're buying in large quantities and you're looking for those price breaks or those ship quotas. And also, we've got PO135 change, which is it now allows you to just print the totals. So instead of looking through that long report that can sometimes take forever to browse through just to find those totals, now you can just look at that report and choose to just see those totals instead of all the details. All right, last module we've got is warehouse. Just a few things here. Shipping feedback and the batch feedback interface now allows external warehouse IDs, which it did not before. You've got, you can now separate the successful records in that WH520. So before it would just error out, and now you can actually separate the correct ones from the error ones and see what's going on with those error ones. And then just a couple flat files and some user fields to the tables. And lastly, we'll just talk about auditing. I'm pretty sure in the finance side, they go into auditing a little bit more because it's more of a GL and AP, and the auditing is really, the good stuff is in the finance for it. But you can add some more descriptive auditing functionality to IC, specifically NPO and the like. This is an example. You'll do it on the company. So here we've got IC01, and you go to the Audits tab, and you can pick and choose how you want things to be audited. Are there any questions?
There are.
There are.
Just one so far. I think this is a rhetorical question, but we'll go ahead and let you field it. Why can't Lawson add an attachment right to the requisition similar to how email does instead of just a link?
I would say that's rhetorical. I can't say why, but there is some sharing functionality if you want to email things in Lawson. There's that little share button at the top if you want to use that email functionality. But
Good answer. And I would say that would be a excellent enhancement request if that's something that's important to you.
Am I on? I believe it's something that we actually potentially have done for customers as well. I mean, there's what Lawson delivers out of the box, and there's always opportunities to do other stuff. And RQC is an area we've significantly enhanced for some customers.
One other question is, are we going into any detail in the receiving area?
In the receiving area? What I touched on, so there are the whole bunch of release notes. What I like to do is I just like to give the basics and the biggest things that I've found are helpful to the customers. So I didn't touch on absolutely everything. There are definitely more things that I could have talked about. There's only so much time, but there are release notes that you can find on Infor Extreme, and they go into a lot more detail if you'd like to know those things.
Generally speaking, there's not major differences in functionality. What you're looking for is enhancement opportunities.
A couple other questions have come in. One is the idea that Mingle can be configured to have the shortcut icons at the top for RQC, MSCM, LIB, ESS, MSS. I think that's what you showed. That would be much nicer than having the shortcuts. I think that's more of a comment.
So I think I understand kind of the question, but so the top that you've got RQC and you've got LBI, and that's a way to get to those. The shortcuts is more if you're going to a specific form, not just an application. So RQC, you'd still need that button or go to the bookmarks to get there, but to look at the shortcuts, that is more for like PO20 or PO25.6, like the individual screens, if that helps.
So we're kind of running out of time. Another question was, could we provide more details on the PO25 audit features? Probably don't have enough time today, but we certainly be happy to follow up with you if you'd like a quick call. Can we have a webinar covering MSCM and the mobile apps in the future? And I think it's on the agenda.
Yeah, it's something we're definitely working on.
Yeah.
So I want to thank everybody for taking the time to attend this. I want to thank Ms. Brittney Degler for an excellent presentation. It's always awesome to see sort of the creative elements of our culture start to bleed out into what we put out for the community.
All my memes.
Yeah, all your memes are awesome. We are meme friendly. Yeah. I do also want to point out, if you enjoyed this presentation, that I believe it's Tuesday, October 26th. She's teaming up with Stephanie Kowal to deliver a presentation on RQC best practices that will also talk about some of those enhancement opportunities. If you want to know about our webinars anytime, I know that we send out emails and we post it, but on our website there's a webinars menu option that will tell you, what's on schedule, going forward for like 2 months, and hopefully you found this fruitful and will join us more for other ones later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.